Imagine you're in the Old West. Your herd has been attacked, and you're about to fall into the hands of outlaws. With no way out, you close your eyes, but a moment later you hear a gunshot. You open them again, and there in front of you stands a cowboy in a yellow shirt and a brown hat, reaching out his hand with a calm smile. You ask who he is, and he simply says his name is Tex Willer, a ranger. Tex Willer was created in 1948 by writer Gianluigi Bonelli and artist Aurelio Galeppini. Their idea was to create the ultimate hero of the Wild West, a man who was fair, lightning fast with a gun, intelligent, and impossible to corrupt. Even though he was an Italian creation, Tex became one of the greatest Western characters ever made, winning over readers especially in Europe and Brazil. From the very beginning, the stories portrayed a harsh and violent West, where only the most determined men could survive. At the beginning of his life, Tex was not a famous ranger, but simply a young man living in the West with his father. That peaceful life ended when criminals seeking land and power murdered his father. This event completely changed Tex's life. Determined to seek justice, he began hunting down those responsible and soon found himself facing dangerous gangs and gunmen. His courage, intelligence, and skill with weapons made his name start to spread across the West. Little by little, he stopped being just a young man seeking revenge and began to become something greater. Over time, Tex caught the attention of the law and was eventually recruited by the Texas Rangers. From that moment on, he stopped fighting only for personal reasons and began defending justice across the territory. As a ranger, Tex faced criminals of every kind: murderers, gun traffickers, corrupt politicians, and powerful criminal organizations that controlled entire towns. Even while working for the law, he was never a typical authority figure. Tex always preferred to act according to his own sense of justice, often confronting dangers that no other ranger would have dared to face. One of the most remarkable parts of Tex's story happened when he met the Navajo people. During his adventures, he met Lilith, the daughter of a Navajo chief. The two fell in love and got married, creating a strong bond between Tex and the tribe. Because of this marriage and his courage, Tex was accepted among the Navajo and received the name Night Eagle. Over time, he even became one of the tribe's leaders, defending the Navajo against injustice and conflicts with white men who tried to take their lands. Despite his reputation as a man who would face any danger, Tex was never completely alone. Throughout his adventures, he had important allies by his side. One of them was Kit Carson, an experienced ranger and one of Tex's most loyal friends. Another companion was Tiger Jack, a highly skilled and loyal Navajo warrior. Tex also had a son, Kit Willer, who grew up to become a great adventurer like his father. Together, they faced countless dangers, from violent gangs to threats that put entire towns at risk. Throughout decades of stories, Tex faced some of the most dangerous villains of the Wild West. One of the most famous is Mephisto, an extremely intelligent and cruel enemy who uses tricks, hypnosis, and even supernatural elements to try to defeat Tex. Another notable enemy is his son, Yama, who inherited his father's hatred and went on to pursue Tex in several stories. These villains turned many of the adventures into epic battles between good and evil. The adventures of Tex Willer span almost the entire territory of the Wild West. In many stories, he faces gangs that terrorize entire towns, hunting criminals across vast deserts, dangerous mountains, and nearly unexplored territories. Tex has also fought arms traffickers trying to provoke wars between Native American tribes and the U.S. Army, corrupt businessmen stealing land from small ranchers, and legendary gunmen seeking fame by challenging the most feared ranger in the West. In some stories, Tex and his companions investigate mysteries in ancient ruins, hidden temples, and abandoned towns, where strange elements appear that mix classic adventure with suspense. There are also stories where Tex must save caravans attacked by bandits, liberate towns controlled by criminals, or prevent massacres against indigenous peoples. In many of these adventures, Tex must rely not only on his skill with weapons, but also on his intelligence, strategy, and leadership. Because of this, his stories are not just about gunfights, but true journeys through the wild frontier. Over the decades, Tex Willer became one of the most important characters in the history of Western comics. His stories have sold millions of copies and continue to be published to this day by the publishing house Sergio Bonelli Editore. In many European countries, especially Italy, Tex became a true symbol of the Western genre in comics. In Brazil, his magazines began to be published back in the 20th century and built a huge base of loyal readers who have followed the character for generations. Unlike many comic book characters who disappear over time, Tex has continued to be published regularly for more than 7 decades, something extremely rare in the world of comics. The series also helped keep the Western genre alive in comics, even after the theme declined in cinema and television. Over the years, many artists and writers have worked on the stories, expanding the character's universe even further and creating new adventures that keep the legend of the Ranger alive. Even more than 70 years after his creation, Tex Willer continues to be published and to win over new readers in different parts of the world. This happens because the character represents something very strong within the tradition of the Wild West: courage, justice, and loyalty. Tex is the kind of classic hero who fights against injustice, protects the innocent, and faces any danger without hesitation. Over the decades, entire generations have grown up reading his adventures and following his battles against the bandits and tyrants of the West. Many readers who discovered Tex when they were young eventually passed those stories on to their children and grandchildren, creating a legacy that crosses generations. Even in a modern world filled with new stories and characters, the figure of Tex remains powerful because he represents the spirit of the classic Western, a lone man facing injustice in dangerous lands. In Tex's stories, the Wild West is still alive, full of danger, challenges, and adventure. And as long as there are readers willing to follow these journeys, there will always be room for the legend of the Ranger who appears when everything seems lost. A man riding his horse, appearing on the horizon, wearing a yellow shirt and a brown hat. A man who never runs from a fight and never abandons those who need help. A name that outlaws learn to fear: Tex Willer. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment so we can bring you more content about the greatest cowboy in comic books.